Dylan from Throttle Company in Columbus, Ohio. We're talking about a 1971 BSA Firebird Scrambler.
Mecum.
All right, so if you know your British bikes, especially BSA and Triumph, 71, we're talking about oil in frame. So this bike, it's sort of notorious. People are relaxing their prejudice against it, and I like working on them. But basically, the oil tank is part of the frame on these. This, which what used to be oil tank, is all airbox. So you can see how it goes into the carbs there. And it's a kind of a bigger, beefier down tube. You can see it, you know, if you're ever curious about it. And it goes a big down tube that goes straight down there. So Triumph does that in 71. 71 BSA is that way too. This is a 650 still. Right side shift, kick only, just like any British bike of this era. We've got a pretty fun looking drum brake. Now you see up this one has the black coating on it, but this is drum, this is an air intake. So as you're riding, you get cooling. This is called a conical drum brake. Zach, maybe you want to see it from this side, or maybe you can see it through there, but it's cone shaped. And these get kind of a bad reputation. I've even heard people joke, and of course, this is going to be such an on-the-nose joke, but some people call it the comical front brake. And I've heard people jokingly say that. Same way people say Lucas is the Prince of Darkness when they're talking about the electrical stuff. It's all Lucas brand, and even these controls are Lucas. I think it's great. I think it's misunderstood. I think if you come from cars or, well, non-British cars or Japanese bikes or anything like that, the British electrical philosophy is confusing. They have positive earth. So the ground that we think of as being negative is actually where the positive goes. So that sometimes is a little hard to wrap your mind around, and so then people mess up and the electrical stuff. I mean, it's old, but they wind up blaming it on Lucas. People do that same thing with the brake. So they call it the comical brake because they don't know how to adjust it. I believe, I mean, it's still going to be drum brakes, so it's never going to be amazing by modern standards, but I believe those are good brakes if you take the time to adjust them properly. Same thing in the rear. You have a comical shaped drum brake. But of course, what draws me personally to this bike is I love scramblers. And this one is, you know, you're getting into the 70s. So 70s are brash and a little bit sort of like audacious style-wise. So you have these side pipes, just ridiculous. Sometimes they call this the hot dog grill, by the way. And you can see that. Some people just take it off. They hated the look of it. But it is correct, as in it should have been there when it was stock. Cool little grill to not burn your leg, because everyone's like, you're going to burn your bloody leg off. So, which I've done. Well, not off, let's say, but I've got a burn on my ankle from it. And my shoe. Hey, here's a good one. It's from a Triumph. So it was the other side. But I love a Scrambler. I love the Scrambler exhaust. This is funny because by today's standards for a Scrambler, you know, obviously it still sells Scramblers today, and they're very popular, and I love them, and I made my bike into a Scrambler. But a factory Scrambler in 1971 was essentially everything's the same, and this is called the Firebird. It has two carbs. That's the very British thing, Triumphs and BSA. So you basically have the two carb model, so you'd call that maybe the Lightning, and you've got a two carb head for power, for performance. You get a little bit more power out of having two carbs rather than a single carb feeding both cylinders. And then you have the Scrambler. So it's really just the high pipes. There's nothing special. It's modern standards. We would say, well, you've got to have a big high travel suspension. You've got to have these shocks that can handle some jumps. Back then, they just took a street bike and they just high pipes so that we don't drag our pipes off of a bump or rock or whatever that we hit, a hill, and then we're off. We're scrambling. So I love that. I love that this is a street bike, which is like maybe a slightly knobbier tread, but by today's standards, I mean, that's a street tire. That's if all terrain, if anything. And then you just have the side pipes. This bike, you know, is going to have a cool sound. That exhaust, especially by today's standards, not restrictive really whatsoever. This is going to have that breathy brum brum noise that I love from a British bike. The reason that I think that happens, my theory on why that sounds so good, both pistons move together. Makes the bike shake a lot, and modern standards, we've completely gone away from that. But both pistons move together, but only one is firing. So you have this moving, and this one is basically just along for the ride. And that, I think, adds kind of this breathy airiness because it's just moving air on that stroke, essentially. and while the other one's moving. And so that's why I think you get that brum, brum kind of extra cylinder just providing that air noise. I love it. It's addictive. Once you hear it, so many people, if this bike started up right now, we would get so many people gather around and say, oh, that sound. And I love to just imagine that, because we might go 4 days. This auction's 4 days long. We'll probably go 4 days without hearing a single motorcycle run. So it can be a little, what would you say, of a tease in that sense. This is a cool bike, very 70s, down to the color, down to the styling, down to the hot dog grill on the side. I love it. You know I love a Scrambler.
Mecum.
And now 4,000, you're going to get 5,000, you're going to get 6,000, you're going to get 5, 6.